Daniel thought coming home early would be a gift. Instead, the moment he opened the door, he realized something was terribly wrong. His house was silent in the way fear is silent, heavy and waiting. His pregnant wife was upstairs, shaking. His mother's voice was still echoing in the walls. By the end of that night, Daniel would be forced to make a choice no son ever wants to face: protect the woman who gave him life or the woman carrying his child. And once that line was crossed, there would be no turning back. Daniel Carter did not expect silence when he unlocked the front door of his house in Westchester County. He had come home 2 days early from New York City, exhausted but lighthearted, already imagining Emily's smile when she realized he was back. The deal had closed. The pressure was over. All he wanted was to feel his wife's hands on his chest, to kneel and talk to their unborn daughter through the curve of Emily's belly. Instead, he heard shouting, sharp, cutting, familiar in a way that made his stomach tighten before his mind could catch up. "Do you really think I don't see what you're doing?" His mother's voice. Daniel froze with one hand still on the door handle. His suitcase slipped from his grip and hit the floor with a dull thud that went unanswered upstairs. "I gave up everything for my son," Margaret Carter continued, her voice echoing down the hallway like a blade dragged across marble. "And now you think you can trap him with a baby?" Trap! Daniel's heart began to pound. Slowly, carefully, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The house that usually felt polished and calm now felt tight, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. "Please, Mrs. Carter, I didn't do anything wrong." "Emily." Her voice was trembling, broken in a way Daniel had never heard before. He moved down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. At the top of the stairs, the housekeeper, Sarah Thompson, stood frozen with one hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide, wet. When she saw Daniel, she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The look on her face told him everything. This wasn't the first time. Daniel's chest constricted as he reached the living room doorway. Emily was sitting on the sofa, her hands clasped tightly over her 8-month pregnant belly. Her dress was soaked down the front. Her shoulders were shaking. Tears streaked her face, her cheeks red and swollen. And standing in front of her, spine straight, pearls resting neatly against her collarbone, was Margaret Carter. She held an empty glass. Water dripped from the hem of Emily's dress onto the hardwood floor. "You think a man like my son belongs with a public school teacher who can't even hold herself together?" Margaret said coldly. "You think a baby gives you a permanent seat in this family?" "Mom." The word left Daniel's mouth low and dangerous. Margaret flinched. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered at her feet. For a fraction of a second, something like fear crossed her face. Then the mask returned. "Oh, Daniel, you're home early." Her smile appeared too quickly. "This is just a misunderstanding." Emily startled herself and, "Stop!" His voice cut through the room like a gunshot. Daniel's eyes moved from the water on the floor to Emily's wrists. Red marks, finger-shaped. The world tilted. "Why is my wife soaked?" he asked quietly. "And why does she have bruises on her wrists?" Emily let out a sob and tried to stand. Her belly made it difficult. Daniel crossed the room in 2 strides and helped her up, steadying her carefully. She was shaking, not crying, shaking. Her whole body trembled as if she were standing in winter rain. "How long?" he whispered to her alone. "How long has she been here?" Emily swallowed hard. 3 hours. 3 hours. 3 hours of his mother cornering his pregnant wife in his home. Daniel turned slowly toward Margaret. "Sarah," he said without looking away, "please come here." The housekeeper hesitated, then stepped into the room. "Did you witness what happened today?" Margaret's eyes snapped to her, sharp, warning. Sarah looked at Emily, then at Daniel. "Yes, sir," she said. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. "Mrs. Carter arrived shortly after you called to say you'd landed early. Mrs. Emily was organizing the baby clothes. Mrs. Carter began yelling, accusing her of spending too much money, of using the pregnancy to control you." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. "And then?" he asked. Sarah's tears fell freely now. "She said the baby would be born less intelligent, that God punishes women who marry for interest, that your child has inferior blood." The room went silent. Daniel opened his eyes. "Inferior blood?" he repeated, staring at his mother. Margaret laughed nervously. That woman is exaggerating. I never said— No, Daniel said, stepping toward her. You said worse. Margaret took a step back. For the first time in Daniel's life, she looked small. How many times? He asked Emily, his voice cracking. How many times has she done this when I wasn't here? Emily didn't answer at first. She just cried harder. How many times? Daniel shouted. Every time, Emily whispered. Every time you leave. Daniel felt something inside him snap. Not into rage, but into something colder, sharper. He walked to the front door and opened it. You have 10 seconds to leave, he said calmly, before I call the police and file a report for assaulting a pregnant woman. Margaret stared at him, stunned. You wouldn't do that to your own mother. I would do it for my wife, Daniel replied, and for my daughter. They are my family now. His mother's face twisted with fury. She'll leave you, she hissed. She'll take half of everything and destroy you. Daniel looked back at Emily, at the woman trembling in his arms, at the child growing inside her. Her love doesn't hurt, he said quietly. Yours does. Margaret left. The door closed behind her with a final, echoing thud. Silence flooded the house. Daniel knelt in front of Emily, gently holding her hands away from the bruises. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have seen it. Emily rested her forehead against his. I didn't want you to choose. Daniel held her tighter. I already did. Upstairs, Sarah quietly brought towels and clean clothes, and somewhere deep inside Daniel, a truth settled in, heavy and undeniable. This was not over. This was only the beginning. And as he held his shaking wife, feeling their daughter move between them, one question burned through his mind. How long had Emily survived this alone? And how far would his mother go now that she had been exposed? Daniel did not sleep that night. He lay awake beside Emily, one arm curved protectively around her, feeling every time her body jerked in panic, every shallow breath she tried to hide. Even in sleep, she flinched, as if expecting the door to open again, as if Margaret's voice might return and start tearing her down all over. At dawn, Emily finally opened her eyes, and the first thing she did was scan the room in fear. She's not here, Daniel whispered immediately, pulling her closer. She won't come back. Emily nodded, but he could feel it in the tension of her body. She didn't believe it yet. How could she? Fear like that doesn't vanish overnight. Daniel's phone began vibrating on the nightstand. Once, twice, again and again. He reached for it and his stomach dropped. 15 messages, all from his mother, sent between 3 and 5 in the morning. Emily noticed his expression instantly. Don't read them, she said softly. Please, not today. But he already had. Every word was poison. Manipulation dressed as concern. Accusations disguised as love. And then the final message froze his blood. I spoke to a lawyer. If there's reasonable doubt, I can contest the paternity of the baby. Emily saw his face drain of color. What is it? Daniel turned the phone toward her. The sound she made wasn't a cry. It was something deeper. Roar, like pain tearing through her chest. She's saying the baby isn't yours, Emily whispered. That I cheated? Daniel was already dialing. She's crossed another line. Within the hour, he was on the phone with Michael Reynolds, his lawyer and closest friend. The words came out fast, tangled with rage and guilt. Assault, threats, false accusations, harassment. This is serious, Michael said quietly. We need a restraining order, and we document everything. Messages, witnesses, photos of the bruises, everything. By noon, Daniel had filed the report. Emily sat silently on the couch, one hand pressed against her belly, the other clenched in her lap. She hadn't eaten. Her skin looked pale, almost gray. Come sit with me, Daniel said gently. She shook her head. I need to pack. The words cut deeper than anything his mother had said. Daniel found the suitcase open in the bedroom. Emily's clothes folded neatly inside. Her toothbrush, her makeup bag, the small baby socks she had bought weeks ago. Emily, he whispered, what are you doing? She didn't look at him. I can't live like this, waiting for her, waiting for the next lie, the next threat. She's gone, he said firmly. I promise. You promised before, she replied quietly. When she accidentally bumped me on the stairs. When she served food she knew I was allergic to. When she joked that some women shouldn't have children. Daniel had no defense left. He had dismissed it all, explained it away, because it was easier than accepting the truth. She told me something else yesterday, Emily continued. She said when the baby is born, she'll wait for me to make one mistake, just one, and then she'll call Child Protective Services. She already printed cases from the internet. She read them out loud, told me how easy it would be to prove I'm unfit. Daniel felt sick. And you believed her? He asked, his voice breaking. Emily finally looked at him. Her eyes were full of terror. I don't know what to believe anymore. The doorbell rang. Daniel froze. A woman stood outside, clipboard in hand, badge visible. My name is Karen Miller, she said calmly. Child Protective Services. I received an anonymous report about a pregnant woman being held against her will. The floor dropped out from under him. Emily clutched her belly, shaking. Daniel stepped aside. Please come in. The interview lasted 15 minutes that felt like hours. Emily told everything. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. She spoke of Margaret, of the threats, of the water, of the bruises, of the fear. When Karen stepped back outside, her expression was no longer neutral. This report was filed in bad faith, she said. I'm closing it, but you should prepare yourselves. This may not be the last attempt. She was right. 2 hours later, a photograph appeared taped to their front door. It showed Emily entering her doctor's clinic. Taken from a distance, zoomed in, on the back written in Margaret's handwriting, trying to hide evidence. Emily nearly collapsed. She followed us, she whispered. She knows where we go. Daniel called Michael again. She violated the restraining order. That's stalking, Michael said grimly. We escalate. That night, Emily's blood pressure spiked dangerously. Daniel rushed her to Hudson Women's Health Clinic. Dr. Laura Mitchell did not soften her words. Your baby is fine, she said first, but your wife is not. Extreme stress like this can trigger premature labor, preeclampsia. Worse, Daniel felt his knees weaken. If this environment doesn't change, Dr. Mitchell continued, I'll recommend hospitalization until delivery. Daniel nodded without hesitation. Do it. The next morning, police arrived. Another report, another accusation. Emily had to explain herself again. The officers were professional, but the humiliation crushed her. After they left, she sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. How many times, she whispered, how many times do I have to prove I'm not a monster? Daniel knelt in front of her. No more. I won't let this continue. He was wrong about one thing. Margaret wasn't done. Family members began calling, confused, concerned, repeating Margaret's version of events, that Emily was unstable, that Daniel was being manipulated. Then came the invitation, a family lunch at Aunt Linda's house. Margaret telling everyone Daniel would be there, that everything was resolved. Michael's advice was blunt. If you don't show up, she controls the story. If you do, you take it back. Emily surprised him. Go. What? Tell them the truth. I'll stay here. Sarah will be with me, and I'll call my mother. I need someone on my side too. Daniel saw the strength in her eyes again, the woman he fell in love with. At the lunch, the room fell silent when Daniel entered. Margaret smiled, victorious. Daniel didn't sit. My mother assaulted my pregnant wife, he said loudly. She threatened to take our child, filed false reports, stalked us. Gasps filled the room. I have proof, he continued calmly. Medical records, police reports, messages. Margaret screamed denial. Daniel walked out. 3 people followed him. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. When he returned home, Emily was curled on the bed, eyes empty. My mother believes her, she said quietly. I have no one. Daniel held her. You have me. That night, the police came again. Another report, another lie. As Emily answered their questions for the 3rd time, something inside Daniel hardened completely. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This was war. And as Emily was taken to the hospital for monitoring, Daniel realized the terrifying truth. Margaret wasn't trying to win him back. She was trying to destroy Emily. And if he failed now, his daughter would be next. Do you think Margaret has crossed the point of no return? Yes or no? The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. Emily lay propped against white pillows, monitors humming softly beside her, one hand resting protectively over her belly. Daniel sat in the narrow chair next to the bed, his jacket still on, his phone face down in his palm as if it were something dangerous. 5 days. 5 days since Emily had been admitted for observation. 5 days since her blood pressure had finally begun to stabilize. 5 days since Daniel had slept more than an hour at a time. He had not left her side. When Emily opened her eyes that morning, fear flickered across her face before recognition settled in. "You're still here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," Daniel said, leaning forward to kiss her forehead. "Not today. Not ever." A knock sounded at the door. Aunt Linda stepped inside, holding a small bag of fruit and a pale pink stuffed bear. Her eyes filled with tears the moment she saw Emily. "She's beautiful already," she said softly, glancing at Emily's belly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see the truth." Emily nodded, not trusting her voice. After Linda left, a nurse came in with a clipboard and a smile. "You're progressing well. If things stay calm, we may be looking at delivery sooner than expected." Sooner. Daniel's heart tightened. That night, as rain streaked down the window, Emily's contractions began. They were mild at first, then closer, then unmistakable. Dr. Laura Mitchell arrived quickly, calm and precise. "It's time. Shuri." The next hours blurred into pain and breath and whispered encouragement. Daniel held Emily's hand through every contraction, murmuring promises he intended to keep. "You're doing this," he said over and over. "You're so strong." At 3:42 a.m., a cry cut through the room. A strong cry. Dr. Mitchell smiled. "It's a girl." Emily sobbed as the baby was placed on her chest, tiny and pink and perfect. Daniel felt his knees weaken. Tears slid freely down his face as he touched his daughter's head for the first time. "She's real," Emily whispered. "She's really here." "She's ours," Daniel said, his voice breaking. They named her Grace, because Grace was what had saved them. Grace was what Emily had shown when she endured. Grace was what Daniel had learned when he finally chose. 3 days later, they were discharged. Outside the hospital doors, a small group waited. Aunt Linda, 2 cousins, Michael Reynolds, Sarah Thompson, holding flowers with trembling hands, and Emily's mother. Emily froze. "I was wrong," her mother said, tears streaming down her face. "I believed lies instead of my own daughter. Please forgive me." Emily hesitated only a second before nodding. "You can meet her, but understand this. Daniel and I come first, always." Her mother agreed without argument. At home, the house felt different, quieter, safer. The first night, Daniel locked the door and slid the bolt into place. The sound was final. A package arrived 2 days later. No return address. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures of Daniel as a child. On the first page, a handwritten note. "For my granddaughter Grace, I will love you from a distance and try to become someone worthy of you. Margaret." Emily closed the album gently. "Do you think she means it?" "I don't know," Daniel said honestly, "but I won't risk you or Grace finding out the hard way." They agreed on boundaries, therapy, time, proof of change, no exceptions. Weeks passed. No reports, no threats, no shadows outside the window. Peace, fragile but real. One evening, as Grace slept between them, Daniel spoke softly. "I used to think loyalty meant enduring anything. I was wrong." Emily smiled faintly. "Love doesn't demand silence." Grace stirred, letting out a tiny sigh. In that moment, Daniel knew the truth. He had not lost his mother. He had found his family. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose the people who need protection over the people who demand control. Do you think Daniel made the right choice by drawing such firm boundaries with his mother? Yes or no? And did Emily's strength surprise you as the story unfolded? And if this story moved you or made you feel something real, comment 100 below. Tell me which country you're watching from, and share this video with someone who believes that love should never hurt.